we trek on weather vane seats, so I'll be doing this heading into the election, which isn't very far away. And one of the people that was chosen to follow this particular campaign is the National Party candidate in the seat of Waitaki, which is Miles Anderson, and he joins us now. Miles, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, you're going to head into that kind of environment. You know, you've had a hard day at Parliament. You know, you've been chewed out in your caucus for doing something stupid. You head into town with a mate. It's a bit boozy. You're in Wellington. You think, listen, I'm the MP for Waitaki. Nobody knows me here. I'm just a backbench MP. And then suddenly you end up on the front page of the paper. Is that sort of a worst-case scenario?
I can't see that happening at all, Michael.
Can you not?
Maybe when I was younger. Maybe when I was younger. But I just don't have the constitution for it nowadays.
Oh, so you're one of these. You're one of these go to sleep people.
Yeah. I've just if midnight comes around, I think that's very late nowadays.
Yeah, actually, one of the good things is it used to be. I mean, it used to be, seriously, that members of Parliament would stagger around Parliament. They were mainly confined in Bellamy's, but I understand it's not as attractive as it once was now, so I guess there's a spawn of you heading on down to Courtney Place. Now, the campaign, you've got a special guest this week in your neck of the woods, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. We've got Christopher Luxon coming to Oamaru on Saturday. So just working around getting that all organised and fine-tuned. So quite a bit of interest. The Wanaka meeting that we had 2 weeks ago was anything to go by, then there will be quite a bit of interest, because in Wanaka we had to move venues because we couldn't fit the people into the venue that we'd booked. So
where did you go from to there, Miles?
So we were at the Lake Wanaka Centre, but we'd booked a room that holds, 120, 150 people, but we couldn't fit them in there, so we moved into the auditorium, which was next door.
Right. And what was the response like from people there? Were they asking questions? Were they supportive? Were they critical? What?
Yep, no, they were definitely asking questions. I would say very supportive. I guess most people have only got a sense of Christopher Luxon from what they see on television or hear in 30-second sound bites here and there. And I've been encouraging everyone to go and see him in the flesh, because you get a better sense of the man. And I think people were quite impressed, particularly if there's always a few. How can I put it? A few people that like to go to these meetings and claim that the World Economic Forum's running New Zealand or whatever, and he dealt with them very well. And
are you getting so that sort of anti-vax sort of conspiracy types? Are you getting those people turning up at your public meetings? Are you?
I think every politician does. I talk to a lot of people about it, and I think they like to. You would know yourself. They seem to make a beeline for politicians, don't they?
They've ignored me, but maybe that's because they know my views. But I have to say that I know that Voices for Freedom on their website have been encouraging their members to go to these forums and to ask those questions, and also to record the answers and put them on social media for their listeners and for their supporters. So there is a campaign underway without question. It's nationwide.
Yeah, must be. Well, look, I think there's misunderstanding from some of these people. I think they don't understand that for the World Economic Forum or whoever to take over New Zealand, that actually we have to give up our sovereignty via the Parliament. So it would have to be quite a substantial, I would think, a 75% vote to pass anything that would give up any part of our sovereignty.
Yeah, the problem is, Miles, and every good conspiracy theory is based on a fact or two. I mean, and then you just simply you draw a line, but unfortunately it goes past that second point and heads off into infinity. But in some ways, the problems with that is that national government signed the UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights. When was that? John Key signed it. Was it 2015? Might have been earlier than that, 2013.
2011, I think, yeah.
And we all know that led to He Puapua, and co-governance seems to have spawned from that. So you can get involved in international agreements that suddenly end up having unintended consequences at home, can't you?
Well, I guess so, but I don't think the number of theories that are espoused at some of these meetings have got any basis in even a slight fact, But anyway, that doesn't matter. Those are there's a group of people who
I don't think you're going to convince them, whatever you say, that either you're right and they're wrong. So, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. You're right. I mean, that's their little bit and off they go. But other questions, what are the sort of questions that, if you like, people who don't have some sort of world conspiracy foremost in their mind, what sort of questions is Chris Luxon getting?
Well, they're certainly talking around education and health and what the our plans are around those. And I guess, when you're giving a presentation to an audience, you can't delve into the details too much, and then the questions tend to go into the details. So it was around how we intend to reduce the cost of living and get government spending under control, how we intend to address the issues in the health and education systems, and how we intend to address the issues around crime and law and order in the country. They're probably the 4 or 5 major areas where the questions were really focused on.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because people are worried about those things. They're the top few things that people are concerned about.
No, absolutely, and I think they show up in the polling as well. I'm interested, though, because Waitaki isn't New Zealand. Well, I'm sure you know that, but it is its own little area, actually its own big area, actually. It's a massive electorate, as you certainly know that. But just to explain to listeners, it's based, I guess you could say, in Oamaru, except it goes all the way from Oamaru to Wanaka. Well, that's about 250, 300k away. Then you also take in, I think, Cromwell as well, and you you're sort of North Otago, Central Otago, Lakes, but from one end of the electorate to the other, it must be well over 300k, is it?
Yeah, I would think so, because, it takes in Geraldine and up to Mexicali.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Top end as well.
Yeah.
So it's quite a drive from one end down to from one quarter down to the other, because you've got a couple of mountain ranges in the way too.
Oh, mate, I'd hate to be that MP. Listen, I know that you're likely to be the candidate that's going to win that, but I'd hate to have your job. That is just you and me on the road so much.
Yeah, I don't mind being on the road, and it's certainly very attractive country to be driving around compared to some other parts of the country where you'd probably fall asleep. I
suppose you could be driving to Ashburton. Yeah, I think it's probably is it Ashburton to Christchurch? It's got to be
Yeah, Timaru to Christchurch is probably the worst
death road.
Drive.
Yeah, isn't it? It's the worst drive in the world. I agree. It's probably the worst drive in New Zealand. Actually, we must ask our callers, is there a worse drive than from Timaru to Christchurch? All right, now, the thing that strikes me as interesting, I was in Oamaru, actually, over the weekend for the blood match. Now, did you go to the blood match?
Yeah, I did indeed.
Now, which side did you cheer for?
I think Kevin's on the Knoll boy, so I had to cheer for them.
Oh, you see, that would have been alienating for the Waitaki boys, wouldn't it?
No, not really, because a lot of my friends are Waitaki boys, and it's. Waitaki tend to win 2 out of 3 times.
Yeah, that'd be right.
So we have our wins. I
didn't realise you were a Devlin, Miles.
Yeah, well, I am.
Good on you. No, up the Devlins. Just to explain to everybody who's listening here, just going, what the hell are you talking about? There is an annual, what they call the blood match, and that's because, to be honest with you, there's a fair bit expended, literally. Between St Kevin's College, which is a Catholic school, and between Waitaki Boys High School, they're both in the same town, Oamaru. It's a bit like Christ College versus Christchurch Boys High. I don't know, maybe Auckland Grammar versus Kings. It's one of those traditional schools encounters. but it's often there has been some antisocial, even criminal behaviour between two lots of supporters. There was a bit more again this year where I think St Kevin's had some of their stuff stolen by Waitaki and damaged, a $4,000 statue or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I heard a bit about it. I don't know the details, but yeah, I don't think it was. Yeah, there was damage. I don't think it was. Hopefully, it's not as much as $4,000, but quite often damage is done too by mugs who are not even, who haven't been to either of the schools.
Mm. Oh yes, it's an excuse to have a bit of a riot, a bit like the French. We don't know that person that got shot in the car, but we'll go and burn something anyhow. Yes, right. That's pretty much the same sort of mentality. Listen, Miles, heading on. What do you? I mean, you are going to be the Member of Parliament. It'd be impossible for you to lose. While I was in Oamaru, I saw an advertisement for the young Labour man. We must have him on the show actually, because it's just staggering to me. He's 1 year out of, ironically, Waitaki Boys High School. I think he was the head boy there last year, and now he is your Labour Party candidate. Have you met him?
Yep.
And what's he like?
Yep, he's a nice kid. Yeah.
Wow.
Look, but I just think, personally, I think it's a tough ask for the Labour. As you know, it personally costs you a lot of money to campaign, particularly in the size. So I think for the Labour Party to put someone in who probably is going to near bankrupt them to campaign around the electorate, but there you go.
No, I think it's a bizarre choice. I feel very sorry for that young man. It's something that he should never have been pushed into or been allowed to do, no matter how enthusiastic. Just to explain to people, Miles' candidate standing for the Labour Party was the head boy of Waitaki Boys High last year. He's having a gap year, as I understand it. He's a bright enough kid, obviously, but he is at, 19, 18? The candidate. I mean, it's just ludicrous. Are they not taking this election seriously, Miles?
I don't know. You'd have to ask.
You're right. I have to ask them. Yeah, right. All right, Miles. Now, you're on the campaign. You've got three, as you say, the expenses of being a candidate are huge, I think, and really unappreciated by most New Zealanders, that when you stand, you basically give up whatever your job is and you're full-time campaigning. You're in that situation too?
Yes, I am. I've got... Luckily, my son was overseas. He's come home for a few months and he's running the farm for me. And but, of course, I've got to pay him. So I'm campaigning full-time.
And can I ask you, what's been the most enjoyable part of your campaign so far?
Oh, meeting people. I've enjoyed meeting people and hearing their story. Most people have a pretty interesting story to tell, I think, Michael. So
yes, they do.
It's been the most interesting part of it. And I guess just hearing not only what their stories are, but what their concerns and what their fears are. They'd like to open up a bit to you. I suppose they'll tell you a bit more than they would if they just met someone on the street. So I guess it's a privilege, really.
In your view, as you are heading on and you're looking at the polls at the moment, there was a bit of a reversal in polls last week. Are you getting a sense, I suppose you would in a place like Waitaki, but are you getting a sense that this is actually seriously close and that almost every day counts?
Definitely. But I guess we have 3 months, I suppose, a bit more than that, to the election, and every week it's going to be an arm wrestle, that's for sure, Michael. And I think for us, as we get close to the election and we're rolling out our policy, that makes it easier to discuss different issues with the public and for us to push the differences that we have compared to other political parties. So, it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle, but, got God bless them, the Labour Party are doing a lot to help us at the moment. So
now, the other thing is also, it strikes me, is that you are, because of the nature of MMP, you're standing for Miles Anderson to be the Member of Parliament for Waitaki with the National Party banner, of course, attached. You don't really, and we've talked about your opponent, this young man, you must have on the show, because I do think that the Labour Party have been derelict in their responsibility by selecting a candidate that clearly isn't going to win, but as you say, is going to be placed under a great deal of emotional and financial stress to do what they're doing. Who knows if that will be good in the future for him? Maybe he'll end up the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who knows? But the second part of that is that party vote. And I would imagine going around Waitaki at the moment, you're meeting a lot of potential ACT Party supporters, are you?
not as many as I would have thought, to be honest, Michael. I think in particular, as we rolled out 2 tranches of ag policy, that certainly helped a lot of the rural sector have some faith in the National Party, and those that were talking about ACT earlier on don't seem to be talking about them as much anymore. So, yeah. Well, you know,
Well, that was the circuit breaker from your point of view, that ag policy release from the National Party?
I think it could have been, and other policies too, obviously. I think ACT and National probably align on quite a bit of policy anyway, and it's just the 30-odd plus % of policy that ACT and us differ on that makes a difference. And I guess always thought, you know, National likes to have a bit of heart with its policy. ACT seems to be a bit more heartless.
Okay, is that way you see it? That's interesting. You're suggesting that, okay, all right. Mind you, they might just be the ginger that you need. You have strayed a bit, you have to say, Miles, the National Party over the last wee while. You got a bit woke sometimes, haven't you?
Well, I think over the last, when the public knows, the last 4 or 5 years up until early last year, the National Party really didn't cover themselves in glory anyway. So wherever you looked at it. So I think the difficulty was, I think there was policy that was rolled out that wasn't thought through, you know, for the 2020 election. But I think there was a lot of other distractions that made it difficult to get policy done at the time. Whereas this time round, the demand is to have good policy and to to have policy that's good and pragmatic, I guess, is the smart thing to do.
Well, I mean, that's the National Party's always been a pragmatic conservative party. At times it's gone mad. I always think Ruth Richardson was a good example of that. But anyhow, moving on, you've actually got a number of local bodies within your Waitaki electorate area as well. I was just trying to work out while I was talking to you. 6. Okay, all right. Now, that's an awful lot. So I guess you've got Waimate, Timaru, Waitaki. You'd have Queenstown Lakes, Central Otago,
and Mackenzie.
Mackenzie as well. Okay, that's massive. All of those local bodies will be struggling, as I talk to you right now, trying to make things work around Three Waters. Some of those mayors, for example, Tim Cadogan in Central Otago, are supportive of Three Waters, and your mayor in Waitaki seems to be as well in Oamaru. Others will not. Obviously, the mayor of Timaru, very opposed, and I know Glyn Leur's not a happy man either. So what has the message been that you've given them, those 6 mayors and those councils, about what National will do should you win in that first 100 days?
So we've stated clearly that we're going to have our own Three Waters, if you like, policy, and that's going to involve giving the control of that back to the local communities. But there's going to be caveats, so that they can't, they have to keep the infrastructure maintained, and they have to be planning to update it. We're going to be able to, get them in a position where they'll be able to finance that stuff. They'll be able to borrow the money via a fund. So, look, I think most of the councils...
Miles, are you getting pushback from them? I mean, are they saying to you...
Not really.
No?
No.
Okay.
Well, to be fair, the Waitaki electorate, the council's three waters are in pretty good shape, and the councils aren't as heavily indebted as some of the urban councils. And the urban councils, I think, saw it, particularly Wellington, which has got massive issues, and Auckland, they saw it as a way of getting government funding for stuff that they should have been doing for years themselves.
Well, that's the issue, of course.
Well, when I say government funding, taxpayer funding, isn't it? So,
yeah. And finally, co-governance. It is an issue that, gosh, you probably just read the ODT this morning or some of my comments on it. I don't know if you have or not. They've finally written that story from the Otago Regional Council last week. It is a massive issue amongst people I talk to, but then maybe, I'm not living in downtown Oamaru or Dunedin. Have you struck that as an issue going around the Waitaki electorate?
It is, but it's certainly lower down the priority list, I guess, than the other issues we talked about earlier. But, yeah, it is an issue. And, look, we've been very clear about where we stand on co-governance. And I imagine when Winston winds up and David Seymour winds up, they'll be talking a lot more about co-governance than we intend to do. So, but, yes, it does concern people. And I guess it's the erosion of democracy that people are most worried about. I mean, we are a liberal democracy, and we have prided ourselves on being that, and being the first to have universal suffrage and all that sort of thing, and to be looking at watering down the democracy that we have. That's a real concern for a lot of people.
All right. Okay, Miles, thank you very much for keeping us up to date. Just on a personal level, how are you coping, mate? You're finding it tough? Are you thinking, I've got 3.5 months to go? Are you getting enough sleep? All those sorts of things?
Well, I'm enjoying it, and look, it is tough, but everything's tough. I mean, and sleep, well, yeah, sometimes I wish I had a bit more, and I'm sure I'll get plenty when I need it.
When you get to be elected.
when I need it, So.
Mate, if you get
that's right.
Can I just tell you, if you get to be a government backbench MP, that's all you'll ever do. Sleep, they'll wake you up, just vote, and then go back to sleep again. You wait for it.
Yeah, well, I suppose you're a man coming from a man with the experience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, can I just say, there might be... Listen, we'll talk more. It's nice to talk to you again, Miles. The very best of luck to you. Okay, see you later.
Good on you, Michael.
Okay, mate.
Cheers.
See you later.